we need to stand up to these terrorists, call them terrorists, and understand what is going on in our schools and on our college campuses. And we need to fight back. Stop donating to schools that allow these terrorists on campus.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Narrative Podcast. Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer joining you today, pulling ourselves away from the world of Twitter where all sorts of fun things happen.
It's always fun on Twitter.
You love Twitter.
And I do too much. It's such a black hole. I've taken it off my phone just for my own sanity's sake. But yeah.
Well, I do need to commend you because I did happen to see you finally updated your Twitter page.
I did. I changed my picture from...
It was 15 years ago?
It was my college picture. Yeah, like I had never actually changed. And I was like, at this point, it looks like I'm trying to make myself look younger than I actually am.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing like when you see someone's picture online and then you meet them and you're like, oh, you haven't updated your headshot in like 15 years.
Yeah,
so,
you can't pull one past the comms guy.
That's good.
I noticed that. I noticed that would happen. But one of the big dust-ups here recently has been... Well, the story started in Minnesota, I believe, where a girls softball team won the state championship. It had a transgender pitcher who just dominated the competition. And our friend Riley Gaines came out, commented against it. And Simone Biles decided to jump into the fray with some really... there's no other way to say it. It was very kind of anti-woman comments that she made against Riley.
And condescending and insulting. You know, the funniest part about all of it is here's Simone Biles, who is like allegedly defending transgender people and does so by insulting Riley Gaines for kind of looking like a man for being tall, I guess was the joke that she was trying to make.
Right.
Yeah. It was such an odd insult, but then she ran away from it.
Right. Well, and to me, the interesting thing about her insult was, what is a man? You're essentially saying there isn't a man.
Exactly.
So what are you comparing this to? But I think the bigger point we want to make here is the fact that she did run away from it. It was a very PR polished of apology.
Yeah.
Like
she very clearly did not write the apology.
Yeah, non-apology sort of thing. But the fact that she still issued that statement shows that we're gaining some ground back culturally here.
Yeah, especially in the middle of Pride Month. I mean, honestly, just thinking about where our office is in downtown Columbus, I can remember when we first moved down to downtown Columbus, Pride Month, there were flags hanging on the pole, like the little banners on every light pole. I mean, you could not get away from it, right? And so to see that not be the case anymore in downtown Columbus, there's some real signs. And then to have somebody like this who is, you'd be hard pressed to name someone who is more culturally celebrated by the media and others than Simone Biles, to have somebody even of her sort of degree of fame and popularity have to run away from this issue, or at least issue an apology. I will say, though, even with it's a two-pronged thing, right? When I was looking at this, on the one hand, I'm really encouraged because we're winning this issue, right? There can be no doubt after a little dust up like this that this is a winning issue for us, and that the culture is kind of in many ways moving our way. At the same time, the thing that jumped out to me is, especially after the last election, right, where this was the number one issue that the left got attacked on was men and women's sports. And the data shows it flattened the left, right? Yeah, arguably, this issue is the reason why that Republicans control the House and the Senate right now, just in terms of like what actually helped win those elections. You would have figured the left would be trying to run away from this issue as much as possible right now. But it's been really interesting, really kind of across the board, there's only been one or two Democrats that have kind of given an allusion to that we should move away from this issue. Like Gavin Newsom did a little thing, but I don't really even trust that. I could see him swinging back. Fetterman at times has shown some things, but again, I don't really trust that either. And I highlight that not to, trying to find the rain on our non-pride parade here. But the reason I do is we have to recognize that in many ways, this wokeism is a religion to a lot of people. And honestly, it reminds me of what we're seeing in LA right now with the immigration riots, right? Like, these riots are a killer, like, politically, right? They're really bad for the left to do, right? The polling shows, the data shows, people see these things and they hate them. This is like, setting aside the morality of these things, right? Obviously, the morality of what they're doing, attacking ICE, saying we shouldn't deport people who've broken the law. And again, if you're in the country illegal, you have broken the law. You know, that on itself is morally repugnant. But you would think, like, even if these guys were just pure utilitarians, they would say we shouldn't be doing, you know, burning cars in the streets and waving Mexican flags in downtown LA and getting violent. This is really bad politically for us. We should not be doing pushing for boys and girls sports. This is really bad politically for us. All of this just has sort of reminded me of how religious the left is, how much wokeism is a religion for them. And a reminder that, like, I think for some folks, I'm seeing a little bit of, after a big election win, we tend to let our guard down and say, hey, we've won these issues. It's great. Man, these issues are far from over. Like, the people who believe in this stuff are still very strong out there.
Yeah, and those protests that we're seeing in LA, they're making their way to other cities, maybe not to the degree of violence that we're seeing in LA. But to your point, Aaron, you think about that visual from LA of the car burning and the Mexican flag being flown.
Yep, by the Antifa guy. Yep, all that stuff.
This is, I think even people on the left would say that's not America.
Right.
Like, that's not the type of America we want. Even if you want to be more welcoming toward immigrants or that type of thing, or may disagree with how ICE is handling the deportations, I don't think that that's what people want their country to represent.
Well, and again, that's the thing about it that's such a big deal to me, is, like, you look at taking the Save Women's Sports issue, it's a 70 to 80% issue, right? But that still means there's 20 to 30% of the population that thinks men should be in women's sports. And what's important about that 20 to 30% is they are the people in the most influential and powerful places in America today, right? And so that's why, you know, the people that are funding, you know, again, you watch these protests and you're like, hey, why does everybody have the same style sign? Why does everyone have the same style messaging and the same costumes and the same, you know, it seems like they're all ordering the same bricks that they're throwing through windows together, right?
They got a bulk discount.
They got a bulk discount at Menards. They got their 11% discount back on it. But the reality is this is well funded and coordinated by very influential people who really do believe in this stuff. You know, and so again, what I'm just seeing here is, while we have a lot of wind to our back on here right now, these folks aren't going away, right? They're not going to stop trying to put. I remember, even just personally, when I saw the videos coming out this spring, because, you know, spring is when track is, and we're seeing more boys playing in girls sports even after some of the national executive orders, and you're like, yeah, this is far from over. There's still a lot of work to be done here.
Just speaking in terms of who's financing the protest, there can be an attitude of, oh, that's just a talking point of the right. They're just making this up. These are actually grassroots efforts. So we had an experience where we had some protesters that we had to at our Columbus Gala, and we're going to hear the audio from that today. But as we looked into it, it took like 2 minutes of Google searching to find out who is funding these organizations. Like, this is not private. This is not just the right coming up with the George Soros boogeyman. Right. This is easy information to find, and it should be obvious to everybody what's going on at these protests.
Oh, you look at I think their protest now is called, like, No King, which, again, that's the one advantage we have, is the people that message and build these things up live in, like, coastal elite PR bubbles, so that they think it works really well. Thankfully, their messaging goes over like a ton of bricks in Ohio. They're so disconnected from just sort of normal folks. But it is a lot of money that's behind these things. And quite frankly, it's a lot of money that came from the federal government that Joe Biden sent out the door, or his auto pen sent out the door in the final weeks of his administration, that funds this stuff. And again, more than anything, I just think it's important to understand our opposition's ideology. And sometimes I think we can just sort of minimize what folks on the other side of the aisle or the debate are looking at things and think of them as utilitarians, or think of them as, oh, well, this, they're just doing this because it's politically advantageous. No, a lot of these folks are true believers, and they're not so easily defeated, right?
Yeah. Well, unless we sound like nothing but Debbie Downers for this entire news segment, we do have some stuff to celebrate in the Senate budget, which is, by the time this airs, should have passed the Senate floor and will head through the rest of the process, which is essentially that we are going to see it go back to the House, into conference committee. David Mahan's going to show up in the middle of the news segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Mahan is here. He's just walking in from the State House. He looks good. Is that a new jacket, by the way, David?
Jerks. No, you just don't pay any attention to it.
We're not what we would call fashion forward here on the Narrative.
By all means,
you are bringing all of our
They
style.
really get their suits from Meyer.
That's the. I walked in the office I walked into comms the other day because David dresses well. DeMarcus on the team dresses well. Chris does pretty good, right?
When he's not wearing a graphic tee.
When he's not wearing a graphic tee, yeah. When he's not wearing
his pants.
When he's not wearing an Ed Hardy tee, but the rest of us dress like dads, and so I was looking in the mirror the other day, and I was like, is this a bowling shirt that I'm wearing right now? I think I might be wearing a bowling shirt now. Thankfully, the comms team said no, and DeMarcus, who's really the only opinion I care about on comms of how I'm dressing. I think he meant this nice. It could have also, he was like, oh, that's a barbecue shirt. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But
I love the discretion in that.
Exactly. That might just be you trying to be nice to me right now. But I'll take it.
It had a cabana vibe to it.
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
But good timing, David, because we're just about ready to talk about the Senate budget and where it's going next, and some of the wins that we're tracking in it as it gets set to enter this next stage of the process through conference committee and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what you've heard us talk about, over the last couple of weeks in terms of are still in there, and that's the thing. When you're looking at the omnibus budget, it's okay. Please don't change anything, right? And so we've got some good marijuana reporting in there. We've got some good curriculum, type things in there. The top story, right, of the day, right, is
it's huge.
Is the iGambling, right, which I know a lot of you are very concerned about, and I looked at
responded to.
Yes, I looked at the report, and so many of you responded to that, and I'm telling you, they heard you across the street. But we're still not out of the woods, right?
Yeah.
We've got to vote this thing out on the Senate floor tomorrow. Then we've got conference committee, but this thing will be wrapping up here. What, a week,
2 weeks? Yeah, I was going to say, it'll be done by the end of the month. So I mean that right there, again, this is why I love state government. It's the good news and bad side of working in state public policy. Is on the one hand, things do move quickly here, right? So that can be a good thing where you can actually get things done, but it can also be bad where things can happen all of a sudden. And you had a behemoth billion-dollar industry just drop in and all of a sudden be pushing really hard for this. Yeah. But your state representatives and senators live in your communities, right? So they know you. They know who you are. They run across you in the grocery store. And so when, honestly, this is the one time that normal people's voices matter as much or more than the powerful lobbyists, right? And that's really what the story was here, was the Vegas, literally the Vegas lobbyists show up. MGM, all these guys. Yeah, they're showing up and they're pushing this, and it's just been because people who go to have their kids go to school with the representatives and senators' kids say, hey, I heard about this. This would be really bad. That lawmaker said, let's not do this, right?
And giving courage to probably the 90% of elected officials that aren't for this.
Right.
So that's a big part of that. You all gave them courage to do the right thing, and shout out to them for doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it's funny. The way things, this is like inside baseball of the State House. What happens in this pressure cooker of the State House, and it's the reason why we bought this building across the street, is we wanted to put ourselves right in the mix of it. Is the lobbying community can just create this pressure cooker, can create this aura of inevitability, right? I mean, that was the thing David and I were just hearing from a month ago. Everybody, well, it's just going to happen. Yeah. People did.
Everyone,
like literally,
100% said that.
And we just started saying, but it doesn't have to. It hasn't happened yet. It doesn't have to. And frankly, reminding folks, hey, you're the one that decides if this happens.
Yeah.
So if you don't want it to happen, say you don't want it to happen.
It's funny, you talk about call those things that be not as though they are. That's what the lobbyists do, right? I don't know if they have a biblical worldview, if they read the Bible, but they are definitely getting in there and prophesying. And so and we have to go in there and say not so.
Right.
And this is one of those cases where we.
I want to, this is David's one compliment for the year. It comes on the fiscal year, so we need to get that in there in June. But David did an amazing job working with lawmakers, bringing in experts, bringing in people who've been harmed. His testimony, if you haven't watched his testimony, we sent it around, was just really powerful on the issue. Again, we're not out of the woods. Now we have to deal with these VLTs, these video lottery terminals that look like slot machines. They're trying to put those in bars and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. But again, that's a whole other fight that we feel confident we can educate enough to stop. But so that didn't go in the budget.
Yeah, hey, Sam, could you just make a note of the second compliment he's given me since I started here at CCV?
4 years.
Just mark the on the track.
We'll make it your new ringtone every time he calls. You get to hear him compliment you.
But we also got there was a lot of other great stuff. I think one of the things that we're really excited about, especially our Christian business partnership, is they got to the flat tax in the budget. And again, this was a really big deal because, when you're moving to a flat tax, so saying right now we have 3 tax brackets in the state, and we've been slowly cutting out tax brackets to get everyone to a more equal state. This is taking us down just to one income tax level after you reach a certain threshold of income tax that you pay at 2.75. And that simplifies the tax code. I think it really positions us, big picture, all the lawmakers and the Christian Business Partnership wants to get to a zero income tax rate. This is a big first step to get us there. But the big thing about this was what the gaming industry was pushing was that, the only way we can do the flat tax is if we replace that income, that revenue to the state with gaming revenue. And we said, no, actually, you can also cut spending to get to a flat tax.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right. and lo and behold, that's what they did.
Yeah, get an out-of-state interest telling the state how they can get to their objective. That makes total sense.
How big a battle is that going to be, Aaron, in the House, right, during conference committee?
I think for the most part there is universal support for the flat tax, right? I know they feel really good about getting there. I think that the bigger thing is going to be keeping some of these other great things protected, right? So, they add, on top of all the other great stuff that we've talked about, they added $5 million over 2 years for ultrasound machines, right? So we want to make sure that stays protected, because what's going to end up happening is all these lobbyists that are upset that their stuff got cut are going to try to, let's make it $2 million for ultrasounds. Or, the big thing we're really excited about in response to the Hope in a Future report is the Senate allocated $20 million for programming around fatherhood and marriage in schools and communities and things like that. That's a huge deal. And again, that's when you have 53% of Ohio's kids born into homes without a married dad, this is actually a big picture. Can we start saving the state's course. And
you are scaring me to death right now, putting all these appropriations out there on the airwaves. Like, it's just, I'm not doing the victory lap yet. I just, you just put it all out there, but.
Oh, it's gonna get even louder. We're gonna just you haven't even heard about the press conference that we're doing yet. So that's
so what I'm
just wait till after.
What I'm sensing from you, David, is it's time to wrap, and we need to move on to our featured segment today. We're gonna hear from our 2 U.S. senators as part of our Columbus Gala. There's a great conversation with you, Aaron, and then you brought the wives up there as well to talk about hope in the future and just really interesting insight from them, especially since they're first timers in D.C. to hear what their experience has been like in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so much fun when you get to do sort of a longer form interview and just give folks, really see their hearts, their personalities. These guys are both used to doing, Fox News interviews or CNN interviews where you have, 2 minutes to talk max, right? To really take some time and be able to dive deeper into issues was just a lot. This was some of my favorite conversations I've got to have at CCV events, and really see Senator Moreno and Senator Husted speak. And then Bridget Moreno stole the show at the very end, which was great.
Yeah. Well, you'll get to hear all of it coming up next on The Narrative. Hey, Narrative listeners. Christians in the marketplace today face more unique and challenging threats than ever before. Businesses are following woke capitalism, chambers of commerce are beholden to social justice, and secular activists are chipping away Christians' First Amendment rights. As Ohio's only Christian Chamber of Commerce, the Christian Business Partnership stands in the gap to advocate for, to educate, and to celebrate Christian business owners. Joining the partnership also allows businesses to provide their employees with healthcare insurance, workers' compensation, and exclusive banking and educational discounts. To find out more and to join, go to cbpohio.org. That's cbpohio.org.
Well, it is a blessing and a privilege to have you both here with us tonight. It's a blessing to have you serving the state of Ohio and leading as you do. There's so much ground we want to cover, and we're going to bring up Bridget Moreno in a little bit, and my wife Maria is going to have a conversation with us. I will say we were going to have Tina Husted join us tonight, but she had a golf tournament with your daughter's golf tournament tonight?
So my daughter, Katie, is a senior. Our daughter, Katie, is a senior in high school. She's going to go play golf at Ohio University. She's about ready to graduate high school. And Mom's a little weepy around Mother's Day that her little baby is going to go off to college. So she's in Dayton with the golf tournament. But the good news is Katie is tied for first after the first round.
Hey, there we go. And as a good pro-family, pro-marriage, we said that is a great reason to miss the gala tonight. But we're big fans of Tina at CCV. I want to just kind of start us off. It has been a whirlwind out of Washington so far. And we've talked a little bit about this tonight in some of the other rooms. But I just want to level set, because I'm sure everybody is wondering what's going on with the budget. What are we going to get that big, beautiful bill that we've been hearing so much about for so long? And what is that really going to look like going forward? So let's start with our senior senator by about 5 days, I think it is. 10 days. Sorry. Yes. Our senior senator, Bernie Moreno. So where are we? Yeah.
We're in good shape. I think we're in good shape. I'm very optimistic. Look, the price of failure is too high. And what I found in business is when the chances of something not happening, you pay such an enormous price, which would be a $4 trillion tax increase. It's not possible to fail. So I think we're going to get the tax reform made permanent. So the tax reform that we did in 2017, just make it permanent, reset the R&D and investment tax credits to 100%, and then eliminate income taxes on Social Security, tips, and overtime. Keep that part simple. On the Medicaid, Medicare piece, get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, put in a work requirement for able-bodied Americans, and use technology and process improvements to make that system more efficient. And pretty much that is what will legally be known as the Big, Beautiful Bill.
Hey.
I would only add to that that there will be a little time before it happens. We want to go as fast as we can. The media loves to cover these things and create dissension. Don't listen to it. This is going to get done. Republicans understand that we need to stick together. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move America forward, and we will get it done.
Amen. Bernie, you said something there that I think is really interesting. We have the left and the media right now are doing everything they can to distort what's happening in Washington, what the Trump administration is trying to do, and it's trickling down in unbelievable ways. We have at my church, there's a man who comes who's a paraplegic, right? And he's in a wheelchair, and we have to, when we do communion, we actually have to serve him. So there was a few Sundays ago, I was serving him the communion we were doing. And he said, hey, would you pray for me? And I said, sure, what's going on? And he said, they're telling me the Trump administration is trying to take my Medicaid away. And I said to him, I will absolutely pray for you. I said, you should know, though, that is a lie, right? That's like the things we're talking about with fixing Medicaid, things like work requirements, that's not impacting somebody who is in a wheelchair and literally can't feed themselves. But this is coming from people that he knows and trusts. So how do we go about actually combating those types of lies today? And what are you seeing that the left, and I'd love to hear from you as well on this, Senator Husted.
It's honestly the most disappointing part of being in Washington, D.C. I tell you, it actually infuriates me. John and I have to preside in front of the Senate. So you guys only get to see the 30 or 60-second clips of the Democrat speeches. We have to have the full feature-length movie, okay? It is not entertaining. What will happen is they just put out lies like that. It reminds me, like, what all of us who are in business, look, we want to win. We want to get that next customer. We want to get that next deal. But there's a line that you just won't cross, that you just will, it would never be worth it morally to succeed based on that. And what I see from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is that line just doesn't exist. They'll go out there and they'll say things like Republicans are going to eliminate Social Security. So imagine what that does to that senior that cannot live without that $1,532 check. What that feels like when she reads that in the media, when she sees it on TV, when the person you described hears that, he doesn't have a plan B. No Medicaid is death to him. And for somebody to say, this is what they'll do, and they know it's not true. They know it's not true. We say it over and over again. I've done countless interviews where I say, we're not eliminating benefits. And a reporter will push back at me and say, well, you're only one of 100 senators. How do you know? And I said, because I can count to 4. We have 53 Republicans. If 4 don't agree, it won't pass. And I know we have at least 4, if not many more, Republicans that will not cut benefits to American citizens. And yet the reporter will say Republicans are cutting Medicaid benefits to those who need it most. And I just see the depravity in that. And it's extraordinarily infuriating. It's the most disappointing part about being in D.C.
Aaron, to your point, Bernie and I, we host events a couple times a week where we allow any Ohioan to come in and visit with us. And there have been many occasions where you will meet people who are wheelchair bound with breathing or feeding tubes, with children who have Down syndrome, who are there truly terrified because they have been told that their Medicaid is going to be taken away. And it's a lie. It's not true. But what we are trying to do is to preserve fiscal sanity and get rid of the fraud, the cronyism, the things that are wasteful, that are inefficient, and just frankly can be improved about how the system works so that we can preserve those services for the people who truly need it. That's what we're trying to do. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have a nearly $37 trillion national debt, of which we pay over $1 trillion a year in interest payments on. And if we do not get this ship righted, then those services will not be available in the long run for the people who truly need them. So we must make smart, tough decisions so that we can preserve those for those people who are truly in need, and that's what we will do.
So, Senator Husted, we've been praying for you a lot lately because I think because all your friends outside, exactly, right?
Apparently, it's my fault.
That's right. That's right. But no, because I keep thinking about, flashback to December, and there's all the craziness around Christmas. There's all the craziness around what we call lame duck around here, right? So it's the last chance for the state to pass bills, and you are lieutenant governor at that time. And also, too, unbeknownst to all of us, was all of this things about the Anduril plant coming in. That again, the governor's office they do a really good job. They can have a lockbox on those things when they need to. We didn't see that one coming, but that obviously you were very much involved with that. And then a few weeks later, you're having to get on a plane every Monday morning to fly out to Washington every week now for the foreseeable future. And hopefully for a long time, at least on our case, we say hopefully, and I know that's a tax on the family. But can you just talk a little bit about what that story was like personally to go from a pretty busy schedule running around the state as lieutenant governor to then all of a sudden being appointed to the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, look, as you know, that was not what I was planning for. When election night happened and JD won, it wasn't on my mind that the governor would be appointing me to take his spot in the U.S. Senate. But as my wife and I'll just tell you the prayerful side of this. We prayed a lot about it. And said, what is the right thing to do? And came to the conclusion that, you just serve where you're called. And as much as we tried to go in other directions, we kept being called back to this opportunity to serve in the U.S. Senate. And all of a sudden, the governor said, "Hey, I'm appointing you." So I said, "Okay, I better call Tina and tell her that, this is all happening and we're going to do this." But it was a dramatic change for our family. But when you're grounded, when you're grounded as a family and you have your faith and you truly believe that you serve where you are called, then it makes it all so much easier. And that's indeed how we view this. We view service as our calling. We're all given gifts in life. Our gift is to serve the public and to serve you. And it has been a true joy. Plus, I thought, well, what could be more? What would I want to do more than go spend more time with Bernie Moreno? I mean, that's a lot of fun. Just a great time.
Everybody bears a cross, John. It's your turn.
So I want to ask a little bit behind the scenes on Senate stuff. Senator Moreno, you had 6 weeks to prepare to take office. Senator Husted, you had about 6 hours. One of the most important things that you've had to do so far is confirm a really incredible cabinet for President Trump. So I just take us behind the scenes. Let's just start with what was your favorite conversation, or maybe most unexpected conversation you had with some pretty big characters coming into your office in those first few weeks?
Yeah, I'll tell you the toughest confirmation is not. This is nothing news to all of you who follow this stuff. Is Pete Hegseth, and the guy's an amazing man. He really is. You meet him in person, just exudes confidence, exudes that warrior ethos, and as you remember from that time, there were things that were being said about him that, I had a lot of negative things said about me, so I related in that regard to him. Sitting next to him with his wife and having her have to listen to that over and over and over again. And it's amplification of, Ohio was for me, but for him it's all 50 states, 24/7 at a volume that was so high. And to your point about the importance of marriage, to have her sitting next to him and having that confidence was something else. And I'll tell you, we're in the basement of the Russell Building. I'm moving into Senator Rubio's or Secretary Rubio's or Archivist Rubio or National Security Advisor Rubio's office. I'm moving into his office
too, actually, at CCV.
At the end of next week. But so we're in the basement. I left my office. It was kind of an amazing moment because I left my office and there was Pete, and my staff stood up and gave him a standing ovation.
Wow.
And I think that meant a lot to him. In fact, Robbie, who was the guy that kind of drove me around for 2,000 miles a week for the last 2 years, was so moved by him and his conversation that he decided to change his life, and he's joining the Marines in 2 weeks.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing.
And by the way, our recruitment's up 30%.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So it was interesting. I'm on the HELP committee, which oversees healthcare, and so I'll give you a few of them. Tina and I were we're like moving into our temporary office, and next thing we know, Robert Kennedy is standing there, and he's coming in for his confirmation meeting with us, and we had a great conversation with him. I really think the Mahan movement is one of the most important things happening right now about what we eat, how we need to be healthier, healthcare inflation, all of the things. We're literally, I don't know if you know this, but if you're in the bottom quartile of income, you're almost twice as likely to be obese as if you were in the top quartile of income. And literally we had a half an hour conversation just about how we're going to help people get healthier with the foods that they eat so that it doesn't cost so much, so that it doesn't weigh on them with diabetes and other illnesses, and it doesn't cost so much, and they can all live a higher quality of life. So it was a really wonderful conversation. But then Marty McGarry and then Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, all of this team that the president has at Health and Human Services are just a great group of people that I truly think are gonna change the health direction of our country, which we must do if we want our young people to be physically fit so they can go serve in the military, if we can drive down our health care costs so we can provide services to those who are truly in need. Just a great visit with all of them in that process, which I think is I'm really pumped about what they're going to do.
Oh, yeah. We're going to... I know when Maria comes up here, that's a conversation we want to have with you a little bit further. And I will say, with Pete Hegseth, a lot of folks don't know this. Again, tough warrior guy. The most recent book he wrote was on the importance of Christian education. And I will say, my one regret from the last few years is that we had the chance to get or we were trying to get Pete Hegseth to come speak. And we couldn't get calendars to line up, and now he's a little
tougher now.
Yeah, exactly. little too busy right now. All right, so 2 more questions before we bring up Bridget and Maria here. I want to go just international here real quick, and then I want to come back to the state of Ohio. So internationally right now, President Trump has really made a big focus, same with J.D. Vance, on ending wars. Right? But it does seem like in many ways we are in a precarious situation. What's your sense of what's going on in the world today? Are we on the brink of another big conflict? Are we able to bring some of these things to a close? Senator Moreno, we'll start with you here.
Yeah, I mean, before we understand what we need to do today, we have to understand how bad the last 4 years were. The weakness of Joe Biden, not just physically, not just mentally, but the projection of just American weakness created instability all over the world. I mean, all over the globe, we had huge problems. So the idea that sometimes a little bit naive that there's an election November 5th and all of a sudden everybody's going to change, it doesn't quite work that easily. So you're looking at Ukraine, Russia. We're really close there, really, really close. The minerals deal is really an important piece of the equation. But we got to also realize Putin's a really bad guy, right? So when you're talking about a ruthless, horrible dictator, it's not the guy wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be a nice guy. He's got to see in Trump somebody who's extremely tough, who does not bend, a military power in America that's rising, our economic standing rising. And I think Putin has seen that, and I think we're in good shape there. Then you look at what's going on in the Middle East. I was just in Israel 2 weeks ago, and I can tell you that a country at war, I've never seen the country more optimistic. I was there back in July, and they were not very optimistic. They were feeling betrayed. They were feeling let down. And what we have to do, of course, is take this opportunity to take care of Iran, which is what causes all the problems in the Middle East. But that's just very complicated. That isn't something that is as easy as it seems, and you have to do both. And then now you have India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers throwing bombs at each other, not too far away from both of those neighborhoods. That's complicated. Senator Rubio and JD spent all week on that, and that now looks like it's stable. You have China that has its eyes on Taiwan, and they're not giving up that ambition. Don't forget North Korea, because when he gets ignored, all of a sudden he starts sending missiles, right? And then to make it even worse, we gave the drug cartels the ability in Mexico to make tens of billions of dollars, which has made them even more powerful and more potent. Now, we've got border crossings down 95%, but that doesn't mean that they aren't done with their ambitions. All of this, imagine you're President Trump, all of this is laid on your lap, and you're not responsible for one bit of any of that, yet you're accountable for fixing it. And to do that with a Democrat conference that doesn't want to give him his confirmations, they'll put every procedural hurdle in mind. I'll give you an example of how sick it is. We didn't have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so we needed to get one in like ASAP. To Senator Thune's credit, put it right on the floor. Elizabeth Warren, for no reason, delayed the vote until midnight just to put procedural hurdles in place. I mean, that's nuts. So this is something that he's doing 110 plus days in. When you look at what's going on around the globe, and I actually think he's got everything I just laid out. I'm extraordinarily optimistic that we get those things done without firing one bullet, without losing one single member of our military. That is an incredible accomplishment because President Trump deeply, deeply cares about making certain that if we do send somebody into conflict, that it's for a righteous mission with a clear path to victory.
So in the history of the world, the nations that are the most powerful economically are the ones who are also the most powerful militarily, because you have the technology and the finance to be able to sustain that. America, for the longest time, has taken the role as the world's policeman, and the president's pulling back from that. But he's also saying that we're not giving up on the world. He's demanding that Europe pay its fair share as part of NATO, which has been a long time in coming. Very important, and as I have had countries surrounding Russia come visit me over the past few weeks, they are very concerned about holding Europe accountable to help defend us. Will America do that? And I believe that we will sustain the position that we are in, attempting to force Europe to pay its fair share. And then also we have, on the issues regarding Russia, I think, Bernie, you might be on Lindsey Graham's bill too as well, requiring if we fail, just if we pass this legislation, we would put tariffs on anyone that buys Russian oil or Russian goods as a way to tell Europe, you should stop criticizing us and paying for both sides of this war, because they keep buying oil from Russia and doing all these things and then criticizing us for not being more involved. We want to give President Trump some more leverage in those conversations. Also, to back up the position that we've taken in the Middle East by saying Iran shall not get a nuclear weapon. It's very important that we make sure that that doesn't happen for the future of Israel and the Middle East. And I believe that Saudi Arabia and the other nations in the Middle East don't want to see a nuclear-armed Iran either. But economic issues that we're dealing with around the world are also important militarily. China has had an unfair trade deal with this country and the rest of the world for over 2 decades. They've been using their trade surplus to finance a military to threaten their neighbors, and it's time that that comes to an end.
I want to just bring it home to Ohio here, just real briefly. So about a week ago, the largest study ever conducted on the abortion pill was released. It was using real payer health insurance data. Found out that while the FDA pill on the abortion drug called mifepristone, which accounts for about 60% of abortions in America today, the FDA label says 0.5% of women who take the abortion pill end up with adverse events. This study, which again is the largest study ever done, actually found the number of women that end up with adverse medical events is actually 22 times higher than that, right? So 1 in 10 women who take the abortion pill end up in the ER with things like hemorrhaging and bleeding, and so the pill is certainly not safe, right? No pill would be approved in that way, and this has now become a matter of discussion. I know we have talked about this, but it reminded me of the abortion amendment fight we had here in Ohio in 2023, and CCV is committed long-term to repealing that deadly law and saving lives of unborn children. And you both were very intimately involved in trying to fight that, right? Both speaking out on the campaign trail. Senator Moreno, you were very supportive, traveling around the state. Every place you were going, you were bringing up the importance of opposing this. And Senator Husted, we were talking regularly throughout that campaign, doing everything we could, knowing it was an uphill battle, not just because of the money we were facing and the media scrutiny, but America on the whole has embraced abortion, at least in some form. So as we are looking at, we're not going to be able to do this tomorrow, right, or even in the next election cycle, but as we are preparing and trying to put ourselves in position to one day get this deadly law out of our state constitution, what do you think it's going to take? Senator Husted, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll start with the mifepristone study. I know how the people on the left are always talking about following the science. I don't think you'll see Dr. Fauci out there talking about the results of that study.
Right, that's exactly right.
They won't talk about it, even though it does have adverse health consequences beyond what happens to the child. There are many ways that we approach this. You talked about it earlier. We're in the phase where we have to change hearts and minds. What we're talking about with giving children a Christian education, first of all, that helps them understand that there is a moral basis for the public policy decisions that we make. If you have a moral basis for looking at the world, you're more likely to come to the conclusion where you choose life. Amen. And so it starts there. That's why the people on the political left fight so hard to stop vouchers and to stop LifeWise and these other things. I mean, look, that's the bottom line. It's where it's at. And then we got to continue to support through our pregnancy centers around the state, everywhere we are, to help support those young women, to show that we are truly the ones who are compassionate in this conversation, to reach many, many families, young women, to help every community and every walk of life through our churches, through the people we touch. Every one of you has the ability to influence so many people in your lives on this. And that's where it starts. It's going to start, we got to restart at the grassroots level. Aaron, you've talked about this very, very well. I heard you talk about this as well as anybody when you talked about our public policy makers didn't let us down. The church did, because how many people from evangelical churches actually voted to approve?
1 out of 3 weekly attending churchgoers.
Yeah, and so it's fixing our own homes through our church, and that is how we're going to change the hearts and minds to eventually live in a world where people will not want more abortions. They'll want less of them, fewer of them.
So, Aaron, next week, we're going to get a significant number of signers on a letter to the director of the FDA to restore the rules for that pill to be around doctor's appointments. We'll have that, and I suspect he's going to act on that. I really suspect he's going to act on that. Look, the other thing we can do in the big, beautiful bill, Senator Husted said we're $37 trillion in debt. Well, sometimes you have to take things off the list of priorities, and certainly funding Planned Parenthood is not.
That's phenomenal. I just want to say, this marriage project that we're doing, 81% of women who get abortions in Ohio are single moms, right? So this marriage project is actually a pro-life project. Peter Range, who's our senior fellow for strategic initiatives, this is one of the things he's working on with us on this, is that actually while this abortion amendment is in place, one of the best things we can do to save lives is celebrate marriage and encourage marriage and get more young women married so they don't feel so desperate in these situations. And the last thing I'll just say, just on this real briefly, we did an exit poll. On that exit poll that showed 1 out of 3 weekly attending churchgoers voted yes on that abortion amendment. That same poll showed us that 78% of Ohioans agree with us that life begins at some point in the womb. Right? Think about that. Actually, 48% agree that life begins at conception. 78% agree that life begins at some point in the womb. Yet 56% voted for abortion up to birth. And actually what our poll showed is that more important to being pro-life than believing that it's a baby is the sexual ethic, right? Actually, a better indicator for voting no on the abortion amendment was being married compared to having kids, right? Because the reality is, in the sexual revolution culture we live in, right, if being a whole person is being fully sexually autonomous, there's a piece of that. The only way that works is if you separate the sexual act from the product of that sexual act, which is children. So we actually these folks going to the polls, a lot of times they're thinking they might not like abortion, but they want to keep abortion in their back pocket just in case of emergencies. And so no matter how much we convince people that it's a baby, right, they're not going to come around on that. So we need to keep that going. We need to keep that argument going, that it is, that unborn life is beautiful and worthy of protecting, and it is a child in the womb. But ultimately, this project we're talking about, marriage and family, is a deeply pro-life initiative. Because until we deal with the sexual ethic and we restore marriage, we're not going to be able to completely abolish abortion. There used to be a pro-life speaker, she's still around, she talks about how we don't want to just make abortion illegal, we need to make it unthinkable. And I would say before we can make abortion illegal, we need to make it unnecessary. And that's through marriage and family. But that's a great segue to talk more about marriage and family. Will you join me in welcoming Bernie Moreno and Maria Baer to the stage? So you all know, Maria and I met in journalism school at Ohio University. She actually became a journalist. I became a lobbyist. And so we actually have someone who can ask good questions up here. But I want to just get us started off first because you should know, you have two of the hardest working campaigners up here, right? Both of these men travel the state, and there's not an event they don't show up at and sit down and have a real conversation with people. But obviously, that takes a heavy toll on family when you're doing that. And so I want to just ask for you guys. You both have incredibly strong marriages. You know, Tina is typically traveling around with you, John, and Bridget. We saw you everywhere throughout this project. So tell us how, as you guys have gone through this test of a campaign, what kept your marriage strong throughout that time?
Well, thank you for having me. I'll have to say, for us, it was a little bit different than with the Husteds because our kids are out of the house. So what this did was it gave Bernie and I an opportunity. We actually spent the most time we probably ever had in our married life was on the campaign trail. But we could do that just because our kids have been successfully launched. So that gave us time for me to be on the trail with him.
And John?
Look, I'm blessed with just an amazing wife. Tina is, she's a wonderful wife. She's a wonderful mother. She's a wonderful friend to people. And our faith is deeply grounded, so we have that commonality where we're all on the same page as a family. Like, we're servants. We're servants of the Lord. We're servants of the public. And everything else is a detail, right? But this decision to go and take the job where I was going to be away from home, I was more worried about them, right? Not about me. I was worried about them. And I found pretty quickly that if you have all of those things right, like, they don't even miss me. Like, really, they don't. Like, they feel sorry for me that I have to be gone from them. But it's been terrific because we just have such a wonderful, loving family, and Tina keeps it all together, and that is a great blessing. And when you live for each other, meaning that you get more joy out of serving your spouse than you get out of serving yourself, that's when you know that it's working.
Amen.
Well, I'm going to do the mom thing and ask number of children and their ages and their names as well. Would you share that with us?
Oh, ours are really old. Our oldest is Catherine, and she is 32, and she is a mom to a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. She's 33. Oh my God. We're on the odd years.
Are you
now.
calling that old?
33. Well, as a mother, I am. Then our next daughter is 31, and she has a 1.5-year-old. Then we have a son who just turned this month 29, and we have a son who is turning 27 next month.
And the 27-year-old, is that the one that you bunk with sometimes in Columbus there?
Yeah. It's every single guy's fantasy. You move from Cleveland to Columbus, you buy your own house, and your parents live with you for 4 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, what could be better than that?
Yeah. Really? That was great.
That's wonderful. Well, I can't top that, right? So we have 3 children, Alex and my daughter-in-law Kathleen and our granddaughter May, who live a half a mile from us. So they're right on our little walking trail, and we can get to see our granddaughter anytime we want. And then Katie, who is our middle child, she's 18 and graduating high school in a couple of weeks and going off and playing golf at OU, as I said. And then Kylie is our youngest. She's 15. Got her driver's permit. Be very careful out there. She's learning, but she's our tennis player, and she's the only one of my children that's actually interested in politics at all. And when we were discussing taking the appointment to the Senate, she was the first one to say, "Dad, you should do it." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Well, I think I might want to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and if you're in the Senate, that'll improve my chances." So,
yeah.
So she's very Machiavellian for a 15-year-old.
I like her style. That's neat. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, "Student driver inside," and then under it said, "Scared parent also inside."
That's good. That's good.
That's very sweet. So our 2 daughters, 9 and 6, they have agreed to not age beyond this. So they're just going to stay this sweet little age. I don't know why you didn't ask your kids to stay that age, but actually, I'm really thankful as well, Senator Husted, for the work you're doing with the health initiatives. And, I've been reading a lot about that the past couple of years, and I'm really thankful to have you to blame now in front of my children, because we've gotten rid of all the Eggos in our house. All they want is a Lunchable, and we're off Lunchables. So it wasn't my fault. It was Senator Husted's fault. But you have children, as you said, that have been launched or are soon to be launched. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing kids of that age right now in Ohio or nationwide?
I can tell you the one thing that this generation is growing up with that is the hardest thing are phones. And the intrusive nature of the algorithms and the social media, and how they're really these companies and people out there in the world are preying on them. You would never let a stranger in your child's room at night all alone with them. Yet if they have their mobile phone in their room, that's exactly what's happening or can happen. And the algorithms target them. We see the child mental health issues on the rise. We see bullying, sextortion, suicide, eating disorders. If you look at the data about transgender phobia, it starts climbing exactly at the moment that the smartphone was introduced into our society. It's like a hockey stick. And it is stunning what is happening to our kids if we're not protecting them from these devices. I love technology. I'm a technology evangelist. I love AI. I love all of these tools. But children are not ready for them. They need to be protected until they are old enough to understand what we're talking about. And to me, that is the biggest threat, that no matter what socioeconomic status you're in, that is the biggest threat our children face.
Just to interject there real quick on that, before Senator Husted, when he was Lieutenant Governor at Husted, he really championed two huge bills. One, to require age verification on social media sites that the social media companies sued and have blocked, so we're going back again with another version of it, but also championed a bill to require age verification on pornographic websites. And that bill, it was the one he introduced was last session, but that bill actually got put into the House budget under Speaker Huffman. So, Lord willing, we are going to have that passed here in Ohio by June. So sorry, yes.
So without a doubt, the biggest challenge for me, it's my grandkids. That I see it coming. My kids are well past that age, but I can tell you, if you kind of look around the corner, what's coming is artificial intelligence is going to change the world in the way the internet changed the world in the early 90s. And unlike the 90s and the 2000s, when the internet first came and social media came, when there was no guardrails, this technology developed, and obviously it did enormous amounts of good. But it also did enormous amounts of bad, especially for young girls, for kids. And interestingly that you asked that question, because we just had a Commerce Committee hearing where we had the leaders of the big tech companies, including Sam Altman, who's ChatGPT, OpenAI. He just had a kid. And I actually asked him, do you think that we did the right job 30, 40 years ago, putting the right guardrails to protect children? And he actually said no. Did a terrible job. And I said, now what do we need to do with ChatGPT and other chat models? And he said, we really have to protect children. So he's committed to work with John's office and my office to make sure that happens. Because if you're not familiar with that tech, maybe you're not paying attention to it, which again reminds me of that early 90s when somebody said to you, have you gone online? You're like, I don't even know what that means. I don't care about that stuff. Or the first time you heard somebody on Facebook, like, it seems silly. I'm not going to put stuff on whatever social media is. You can now have an entire conversation with an AI bot on your car's speakerphone for as long as you want, and this thing will just talk to you, answer questions. Can you imagine? Now, as an adult, you can see there's a lot of really positive uses. You can ask it some questions, which I was doing on my 2-hour car drive when Bridget's not with me, because I wanted to understand when Democrats control Congress, what were the bills that were passed? When Republicans controlled Congress, what did those bills look like? And it was actually really good data. So it's very, very positive and very informative. But can you imagine what a 5, 6, 7, 9-year-old, you have no idea what the underlying data source is and what that kid could be learning that's totally in contrarian to what you're teaching them as a parent. And these things are readily available with no age verification. So we have to get on top of that before we've done enormous damage and then try to fix it years later. So we're going to be on top of that this year to make that happen.
Amen.
What I would like to add is, and it'll actually bring us back to Aaron's story about King Saul, is first we had in recent history a generation of parents that were helicopter parents. Then now what we have now are snowplow parents, which means that they remove every obstacle from their children. Don't allow that. I say give your children the blessing of failure. And as King Saul learned, actions have consequences. Let your children experience that.
Oh, that's well said. That's really well said. So I want to ask, again, mentioning you guys have all traveled the state so much, and in our Hope in a Future report, I think some of the most devastating numbers we saw, especially where I'm from in Warren, Ohio, Northeast Ohio, you have numbers that show, in Warren, 66% of kids are raised in homes without married dads, and you have a 50% child poverty rate. As you're driving around the state, what do you see happening with families today? And what are the things that come to your mind about what needs to be done today to help rebuild families, and what are things we can be doing?
First of all, thanks for this report. It's a great report.
Yeah.
Well done. But Daniel Patrick Moynihan did something similar to this in the 1960s. And we've seen subsequent reports. I remember in 1993, I was reading a report that said 90% of people living in poverty fell into one of three categories. They either were involved in an out-of-wedlock birth, they didn't graduate high school, or they had a drug or alcohol addiction. And these stats, they just keep coming, but our outcomes continue to get worse and worse and worse. So, it's actions that we need to take. I will give you one example of something that I am working on right now that I think will help. And that is eliminating the benefit cliff, where the government literally says, stay single, don't go to work, and you can continue to get government benefits.
Yep.
It's wrong. It just makes no sense, because we are driving the father out of the household via government policy. We're not encouraging family formation, and we're giving perverse incentives, the wrong incentives for how you're successful in life. And it needs to stop. I hope that I'm working hard in the reconciliation process as we go through to at least get some states, some pilot programs. We don't need to solve it all at the federal level. Ohio will do something great. Indiana will do something great. Utah, Oklahoma, I've talked to senators from those states. They want to do something in this space. And we've got to start by changing literally the government incentives that kick the dad out of the house and tell mom not to go to work.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting when you drive around the state to every corner and you see what's happened over the last few decades in terms of deindustrialization of this country. Ultimately, you can't fix these things at the federal level unless you're committed to making certain that there's opportunities for good, high-paying jobs where a mom or a dad can go to work, raise kids, live in a safe community, and be able to afford a home and a car. So the best thing we can do in government is create an environment for businesses to be here, to invest here, to grow here, to pay their people well, because we have low taxes, low regulations, and it's just an easy place to do business. That includes trade policies. Like if you look at, for example, you talked about Warren, Ohio, and the industries that used to live there. Those industries were gutted because of terrible trade deals. 25 years ago, China had a GDP of just over $1 trillion. It's now almost $20 trillion. We paid an enormous price when we allowed China to absolutely come in and pillage our communities. So we have to reverse course on that, and we have to make things here in this country. Those manufacturing jobs pay well. It allows that person to live a life of dignity. I see Mark Kwame over there. He's bringing technology to America to make the chipsets that go in your phones that are currently almost exclusively made in China. We can make those here. And when we put American workers in a level playing field with the rest of the world, we're doing not just good work in terms of trade, we're allowing those jobs to exist. And I think the other piece that has to happen, it's something that John and I, we're by far the most cohesive delegation. Kentucky's the least cohesive delegation. We're the most cohesive delegation. I mean, if you put Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, they're both human. That's the only thing you would say. They both walk upright for Mitch most of the day. But not the whole day. But anyway, back to my point. When we see, I think both of us share something in common, which is the second piece of what we can do in Washington, D.C. and in state government. So I'm looking at the speaker there. Is I think when we have companies that want to come to Ohio, they want to grow businesses here, they want to invest, they want to hire people, they want to be a strong, functional part of our community, we're going to embrace them with total hugs. We are going to make everything possible for them to succeed here. But if those companies are coming here to gut our businesses, to be corporate pirates, to rip our companies apart, to sell them for scraps and pieces, they're going to face a wrath of holy hell that they have never imagined in their lives.
He's serious.
What I would add to that is, as a very conservative and non-politician, I look to what can we do without the government's help. And as great as report as that is, we know that those changes aren't going to happen overnight. So what can we do today as individuals? My one word to you is mentor. Become a mentor. I started mentoring many years ago. I think it was about 13 years ago at one particular inner city school in Cleveland. And it was a middle school of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And at that time, I was with the 7th graders, a small group of students. And we were reading a book about a family driving on a vacation from Detroit to Birmingham. So I asked them, how many of you had been on a vacation with your parents? They looked at me like I was crazy and said that they got together, of these kids in my group, they couldn't come up with 5 kids in the entire school who had both parents living with them. One of the girls that I mentored, her father had 20 children. So we cannot fix this overnight by the government or through this report. Go out, you know your strengths. There are people that need your help.
Amen.
I want to add one thing. It is the law in the state of Ohio to teach the sequence to high school students, which means, yeah, it's great. So, which means, for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that you're supposed to graduate high school, find a job, get married, and have children in that order. And that's the sequence for success in life, because you look at the data and there's almost nobody that ends up in poverty that follows that sequence. But there were several schools who refused to do that, to teach that, because they said it created a stigma because so many of their children in their schools didn't grow up like that. It's not a judgment. It's a lesson for children to see how to be successful. We stand in judgment of no one. This room, we're Christians, we're all sinners. Amen. Right? Amen to that?
Amen.
None of us are perfect. And we all are fallen. It is not to stand in judgment for how anything happened in that child's life. It is to help that child have a model to know if they want to be successful, this is how to do it. That's the mentorship that Bridget's talking about, to set that example, to let them see. How do you know what success looks like if you never get a chance to see it, touch it, feel it? No one explains it to you. That's what we can all do in life without government's involvement.
What's so frustrating about that kind of stigma against teaching it is that the people who know most intimately the despair of not having married parents at home are those children and are single moms. You know, I mean, they know that they deserve and want to have intact marriages and their parents with them at home. And it's really, it's kind of a tyranny of low expectations that we wouldn't help people, help kids imagine that. I want to shift gears really quickly just for our last question of the evening. Bridget, you and I were talking a little bit earlier tonight about you were just recently in Israel, and it sounded like that trip made a tremendous impact on you. I know you've been more than once recently. Could you share what brought you there and your impressions?
Sure, that was actually our 4th visit to Israel. I think what we as Americans need to understand, and I'm fearful that not enough Americans understand this, Israel is just a microcosm of what is going on in the world. We're next. And we need to stand up to these terrorists, call them terrorists, and understand what is going on in our schools and on our college campuses. And we need to fight back. Stop donating to schools that allow these terrorists on campus.
Woo!
If you see these encampments on college campuses, go counter protest. Hey. You don't want to be there alone? Call me. I promise you I will be there with you.
Hi. So you asked Aaron what campaign story. So, when you're in politics, you're running a campaign and, you got this opponent with seemingly unlimited money. Everything is very, very careful that you don't do something nuts, which, my team had their hands full with me already. But I get a call from my team and I go, and the call goes like this. Hey, Bernie, hey, what's up? Is Bridget with you? Oh, no. She had some personal things to do up in Cleveland. Uh-huh. Do you think it's possible that, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, is the guy talking to me, that your wife is in the middle of a protest against Hamas demonstrators at Case Western? And I said, oh, it's not possible. It's likely.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So I'll say this about Bridget and Bernie. They are tough, and they gave America one of the greatest services last election cycle, didn't they, by winning that election?
Yeah. Amen. Well, will you join me in thanking Senator John Husted, Senator Bernie Moreno, and Bridget Moreno?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.